Hello, this is Spencer Green, and I'm doing the Ngrams project for the Walking Dictionaries course. My comparisons are with the Soviet Union and Russia and usage. First, I wanted to see all the names of the Soviet Union that I could find, the English ones at least: Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic and Russian Soviet Socialist Federative Soviet Republic are used, but very little. Those are really starter names, and even then, they're not really used. Um, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the official name, is used a little bit, but not really. More the abbreviation of USSR is used, and then Soviet Union is the main one. It's catchier and easier. It makes sense. Um, so I wanted to see where it compared with Russia in usage. So you can see Russia spikes around World War One, and this is about when Russia fell and became, or was overthrown and became the Soviet Union. And you would expect a big spike in the usage of Soviet Union to come up. And I mean, I looked for a lot of names of the Soviet Union to see if it was just a different name that I wasn't seeing that was used in the beginning of the Soviet Union, and it really, there was no, I couldn't find any other name. They just didn't mention the Soviet Union. They just kept referring to it as Russia, and there's the dip. I mean, it started to slowly gain popularity, but really right here is when the Soviet Union came into being. And you can see it starts to slowly come up. And I was like, well, why does it this happen and this happen, and like, does it slowly finally kind of switch? And then I looked. This, I reasoned this is about World War II when it spikes up again, which makes a lot of sense. They were a huge part. Um, right around the end here, and then it slopes down, and this starts to get some big bumps. And what these big bumps are, I found, is around the same time in the 50s and 60s. From the 50s to the 70s, really, is the Korean and Vietnam Wars, the proxy wars. So you can see, I looked those up to compare them. Korea starts to gain popularity around the same time Soviet Union does, and at the end of the big, around the same time of the big Russian spike, um, but around the tail end of World War II. And then Vietnam helps spike it more, and Russia gets a little bit of hype, but really just kind of plateaus and starts to decrease. And then the Cold War happens. Um, it really starts to get into play with nukes and whatnot instead of just proxy wars. And people, with the use of nukes, people finally start changing. And another reason it finally becomes USSR and not just Russia in English usage is because around the same time I checked, these are all the names of the other countries besides Russia and besides Georgia, because it shares a name with the U.S. state, um, of countries that were absorbed into the Soviet Union. And they were all absorbed around the time it became, same time it was started being called Soviet Union and not just Russia. You can see they all have a spike around World War One, and then another spike around World War Two, most of them, and then they all start to slope as they're absorbed into the Soviet Union, and then all come back. Well, most of them come back. Some of them change names or turn into other countries. At the end of this, when the Soviet Union fell in the 90s, that's when so the Cold War and the adoption of the other countries, and when it finally becomes USSR, and it could probably be a combination of the nukes and the big threat and the um use. I mean, like Russia getting nukes too, not just, obviously not just U.S., because U.S. got nukes in the Second World War, but it more so probably the adoption of these other countries that finally got USSR and Soviet Union into the main usage. And Russia, we recognized it was no longer Russia until obviously the Soviet Union fell and all the countries dispersed, and we just called the Russia and all the other countries their old names or new names. And Soviet Union is really just published in historical documentary. So yeah, that's why that's like that. Here are my sources um, for my dates and whatnot. And thank you for your time. That's been my presentation.